So another thing I had questions on was putting the clamps on the sides. What are these called? Why do you do what you do? What do you do what you do? The logic, etc. These are squeeze clamps, specifically Irwin Quick Grip squeeze clamps. There's a bunch of different sizes. They also come from tiny to much larger. I just realized that I need the larger ones. I have them from small to I think 2 or 3 feet long for what they'll expand for. The reason I need the bigger ones is this one's at max capacity and it won't fit over the box, let alone in the other direction. So these ones are too small for the test. These should be right size, yes. The logic for these and what I do for when I'm doing box joints like this is anytime you have joints where they're fitting together, I need one other thing. So as I was saying, anytime you have joints that you want to fit together, most of the time you want a square corner. If you don't have a square corner, for example, a square lid is not going to fit. If it's cockeyed at an angle and this is less than 90 degrees and this is more than 90 degrees, a square lid is not going to fit on. Or if you do make the lid fit on, it will only fit in one direction because you've had to torque the lid such that it will fit. What I try and do when I'm doing these boxes, one, I have my box joint jig set up that it does the very precise box joints. So I have not touched it for a few years now. It's set up for perfect 1/4 inch box joints. I leave it sit like that. I use the other router table instead of that one. That one's now only for this because it's dialed in to make perfect box joints. And I don't have a need for it for anywhere else, so that works for me. And it's not that hard to reset it up every time. You just have to do testing and then get it all on. Anyway, I want a nice square joint. It's vital to have exact same length from the two sides and the other two sides. If this and this are not the exact same length, if you have this into the corner and this into the corner, it's going to be at an angle. Ask me how I know. The lathe cart had that problem. I had slightly off and didn't notice it, and then I ran into all sorts of problems trying to get it put together. For a box, what you can do is they sell small machinist squares. They sell all different size machinist squares. I have one of the sets of the smaller ones. So what these are good for is either on the outside of the box or on the inside of the box. You get them all lined up, and then when you look in the corner, if there's any gaps, like if it's like that, so it's at this side it's touching, that side it's not, and if this was actually flat to the base, you know that has to tweak slightly till you get an exact match. So these are pretty much, it's the whole way along here, it touches in the corner, and it's the whole way along there. And it's actually like that the whole way around. So that means that when I made this box, I managed to get these such that all 4 corners were basically a perfect 90 degrees. Now, how do you do that with clamps? Once you get all 4 sides that are identical, you need to not over clamp. You need to clamp, but not over clamp. And what do I mean by that? If you have a clamp and you watch this wood in this direction, if I squeeze it too much, there's a bow there. How do I know that? I can put this in, and there is now a gap along the bottom. And if I tried to put it on the outside, which I can't because that's too close, let me put it farther away so it's a little more apparent. So you can see that there is a bow in that. If I put this and I come up, it's along that side. So this is tight, and there's a gap there that I can fit my fingernail in. Actually, I can almost fit the other clamp in. So that means you clamped it too tight. If you release the clamp, that will come back, and you release a little bit more, and then the sides line up, and we don't have the gaps. So you have to have it clamped just enough that when you try and pick up the clamp, it's clamped. So that means it's holding, but not too much to distort the corner. Because if you have distortion, you're going to have problems fitting later. If you have this corner and it's distorted in and you glue it solid, guess what won't spring back to square? Your glued corner will now be glued permanently at an angle versus at 90 degrees. And you don't want that most of the time. Again, if you want that, go for it. But I never want that in my boxes. I like having square corners because that makes doing lids so much simpler. Because then you can have a lid and it doesn't matter if you're going on one direction or the other. I've actually had boxes where it was close but not quite, so I had to put it such that the box lid only went on one direction. And I'd rather not do that when I make boxes. I'd rather have it so that the person doesn't care which direction the box lid goes on. So yeah, so this is the way I put these on and try not to It helps to get it square to the box. And also with these, I try and get it close to the joint, but not so close that it gets in the glue. So I get it close because if you're getting it close, there's less chance that something's going to bow. Because everybody probably knows this, but if you have something and there's not a very big gap, you can put weight on it and it doesn't move very much. So by pushing on there a decent amount, not enough to break it, but a decent amount, enough to make my fingernail change color that I'm pushing force, this doesn't deflect. But if it's out here, I can't even push enough to do this. Well, I can almost, but it goes, you see it goes way down. And it's not causing the same color change in my fingernail as the other one. It's causing some, but that's deflecting more than an inch. So if you have something that's deflecting, like squeezing in the middle, it's even just with minimal pressure, it's easier to cause this to bend if you're pushing in the middle than if you're pushing right next to where there's something that's holding it stiff. So you have to determine, and it's practice, but you determine where you can get the clamps on and you get it close, and it's less likely to bow if you're holding right next to the edge than if you are in the middle. So then you would put like one there, and you would come in the other way, and you would go up close to the edge from the other direction. And then hopefully, when you go in and check this, it's not very deflected. It's slightly deflected, like you can tell that I can move the clamp. So it is slightly deflected even with that. So let's see, which direction was it that messed that up? It was this one. So I'll bet if I go in here now, yeah, it doesn't do it now. So with this clamp, I was still pushing too much and it was causing deflection. So let's see if that's any better. Yeah, that's pretty close. That's pretty close. So anyway, that is the theory behind that. And again, these are tight enough that you can pick up the box or pick up the wood, but not tight enough to distort the corner. So that's the methodology for me using the clamps that, again, I just glossed completely over when I was gluing up the box.